It is time for us to welcome in Dane Brugler, NFL draft analyst for The Athletic, does some incredible work, just released his 2021 draft guide called The Beast, and we appreciate you taking the time. I'm sure you're probably glad you're done with that project.
Yeah, it's a year-round project. A lot goes into it, but it's been great to get all the feedback. People are really enjoying it, and people have it by their side on draft weekend. So a lot of these fans know about the first-round players, but when you draft that tight end from UCF in the 7th round, that's where the draft guide really kind of can flex its muscles.
Absolutely. And those of us who love to know everything about the NFL and the draft process, this is definitely a thing to look into. So we enjoyed your work on that. Let's dive right in to the Tennessee Titans, because this is an interesting draft for them. They've got 9 picks in this draft. This is also a draft where I think fans are like, you have to get it right with what happened last year and really the failure with that first round pick. At number 22, you have the Titans taking Christian Barmore out of Alabama, defensive lineman. And I think a lot of people are thinking, well, maybe take an edge rusher or take a cornerback. But you like this guy because in your eyes, if he's on the board, you take him.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And when you look at John Robinson and the Titans and what they want to do, they want to build in the defensive line. And they did bring in Denico Autry in free agency. Obviously, with Jeffrey Simmons being one of their best players on defense, they've got a pretty good defensive line right now. But you add in a player like this with the Christian Barmore to be part of that rotation. We know the Titans like to draft SEC players in the first 2 rounds. So another check that box. So I'm not saying that Christian Barmore is going to be the pick, but I think he's in the conversation, especially when you factor in this is not a strong defensive tackle class. It's one of the weaker defensive tackle groups we've seen in a while. So if Christian Barmore is there, with his size, with his raw ability, and watching him down the stretch for Alabama, this is a player that just does not like to stay blocked. And when he has that explosiveness at that size with that power, and still a young guy, he's a redshirt sophomore. So I think he's at least in consideration there at pick 22 for the Titans. Front 7 makes sense, though. There's plenty of edge rushers that could be in that conversation as well.
I was looking down after that, and I saw that you had Elijah Moore, right, going to Jacksonville, I believe.
Right.
And I know that is a guy that the Titans have talked about. I know A.J. Brown is trying to do everything he can to say, get my buddy here. Could you see the Titans going with a wide receiver and potentially, if he is on the board, going with him at number 22?
Yeah, it's not going to take much to talk yourself into Elijah Moore. They force-fed him the ball in that offense in Lane Kiffin's offense at Ole Miss, and he responded in a big way. He led the FBS in catches per game. They lined him up all over the formation, inside, outside, in the backfield, found creative ways to get him the ball. So really strong hands, a really good athlete, 4.35 in the 40-yard dash. There's so much to like about what he can bring to your offense, using him in different ways. So you look at this wide receiver class, and maybe that's the reason why you don't draft him there, just because this is a deep wide receiver group, and you feel pretty strong about the wide receivers that you can get 2nd, 3rd, 4th round. But at the same time, if you are looking to add a shot of adrenaline to your offense, a guy that is going to be able to help move the chains, help score points, Elijah Moore could be that player. So absolutely, he's another guy I think belongs in the conversation at 22 for Tennessee.
You do have 2 defensive players going for the Titans. So the first round, you have him. You've got a edge out of Texas going at that 53 pick. Tell me a little bit more about him, and why do you see the Titans just going ahead and diving into defense and going with that in their first 2 picks?
Well, I think that some of the defensive tape that we saw last year from the Titans was not very flattering, and I think they want to really shore up on that side of the ball, especially that front 7. With the pass rush, you want to put more pressure on the quarterback, and that's going to help things in the back half of your defense as well. And with Joseph Osai out of Texas, he can help you do that. He's still learning the pass rush position. He was more of an off-ball player as a sophomore. He's a big guy who can run. He tested really well. He has that first step. And I think what you love most about Joseph Osai is the motor. He does not quit. He flips a switch when he's on the field, and he does not quit pursuing the football backside. He'll make some plays that he has no business making, but with his relentless effort, he's going to figure out how to make that play. So that right there is a great selling point. If you're able to get Joseph Osai outside the top 50 picks, love the value at that point.
We always talk about, the first rounder and even a second rounder, what you can get, but the Titans have two third round picks, and I feel like you can get some good players in that third round, and to have two picks, I think it's important that they hit there.
No doubt about it. And at certain positions as well, you look at pass rusher, offensive tackle, corner, wide receiver. Those four positions really stretch in this year's draft. You don't have to necessarily, because there's some positions you look at a maybe not as deep class and say, well, we better get our guy now because it's not going to be one later. But when you look at the Titans' needs and potentially where they could go in the draft in the early rounds, I think it matches up fairly well for them in terms of the depth of this draft, especially in the top 100. They could use more cornerback help. And if they wanted to wait until the third round, they could do that and still probably land a player like a Paulson Adebo out of Stanford, or maybe Aaron Robinson out of UCF, Ifeatu Melifonwu from Syracuse. So there's a lot of quality at that position that will stretch. And pass rusher as well. Does a Peyton Turner out of Houston last that long? Deo Odengbo from Vanderbilt, he could be a possibility as well. So this is a position this year with pass rusher, corner, offensive tackle, wide receiver, four positions that we could potentially see the Titans going early in the draft. That I think matches up well with the depth of this class and what they need.
Okay, there's been some inconsistency when it comes to special teams at the kicker position. Okay, Dane. So there's no doubt about that. The Titans need to eventually find a kicker that's going to come in and kind of be that guy moving forward. And I know you've got one here in the 6th round, Evan McPherson out of Florida.
That's
who
right.
You got? Yeah, tell me a little bit about him and how important it is to get a kicker into this organization at this point.
Right, and it's funny. You get different fan reactions to drafting a kicker, but we're talking about a 6th-round pick here. What are the odds that 6th-round pick is really becoming an important player for your team, on offense or defense? So if you feel strongly in the kicker, then throw that dart and see what happens. But with Evan McPherson, he's 5'11", 185, and he's got a pretty big leg. But most importantly, he was accurate. He set an SEC record for career accuracy. He had the most 50-plus yard field goals in Florida history this past season. So there's a lot of things that you point to and say, okay, in clutch situations, he was dead on. I think special teams coaches are really going to like Evan McPherson, and I think even in the 5th round, he might start getting some of that buzz. A team might, looking for that consistency at kicker, might try to, take Evan McPherson at that point and say, let's try to fix our kicking and get better in that area.
I did want to bring up one more player that you have on your board here with the Titans potentially taking a little bit further down. That is in the 4th round, Hunter Long, tight end out of Boston College. And this is a position that the Titans have kind of enhanced in the past couple of years, but now you've got Jonnu Smith, who has parted ways. There's not really a tight end one right now, and I don't know if this guy could come in and eventually be that, but what do you like about him, and what's his ceiling?
I don't know that he has a huge ceiling, but I think he has a high floor. You just know what you're getting with Hunter Long. 6'5", 255 pounds. And what I really like about him is in the last 2 years, he played in 2 very different offenses, where as a sophomore, he was playing in a smash mouth, run the ball offense. So we got a good chance to see him as a blocker. This past year, with the new coaching staff, they put the ball in the air a lot more, and he responded. He led the FBS in catches among tight ends with 57, average 12 yards per catch. A pretty good athlete, not an amazing athlete. He's not Kyle Pitts, who's going to be a top 10 pick at the tight end position, but 4.68 in the 40-yard dash. And if you're able to get this guy 3rd, 4th round, I love the value at that point. Really strong hands, just a dependable player. Like I said, not a huge ceiling as a player, but dependable, and you know what you're getting with him. So a guy that at some point during his rookie year, I think could compete for those tight end 1 snaps.
Finally, just on the note of the Titans, is this going to be a draft that they can really hit in? Do you feel like with the picks that they have, the needs that they have, do you feel like they can hit in this draft?
There's no doubt. And, like I kind of laid out before, I think a lot of the needs lay out well with the depth of
Yep.
this draft and where the strong points are. But at the end of the day, it's all about getting the right players. And it will be interesting to see how last year's debacle, how that factors into their thinking this year. And this is a tougher year because we don't have the combine. We don't have a lot of opportunities for these teams to have in-person one-on-one time like we usually do. The area scouts haven't been able to be on the road in the fall, getting to know these players. We had the pro days, but teams aren't allowed to show up early and take them to dinner. We don't have facility visits or private visits this year because of COVID. So with all the restrictions in this draft process, could we see a team like the Titans, especially after last year, could we see them be a little more conservative with the type of player they pick and, just a guy that they have the fewest questions about? It will be interesting to see how last year does affect the Titans drafting moving forward.